Hey everyone, and welcome to Isms by Josie. Today we're going to be doing an itty bitty knit kit that I got from Five Below. For my returning subscribers, thank you so much for tuning in. And for my new viewers, please consider subscribing, share, hit that like button, leave a comment below, and click on that notification bell for future videos. So today, you guys, we are doing a viewer request. This is an itty bitty knit kit. If you need help on a kit and you don't want to wait for me to find it, go ahead and comment in the description box below. And then you can also send me a clear image of the instructions via email. My information is in the description box below and as well as on my channel. So we're going to get into this. I'm going to try to push out all these Valentine's Day boxes all at once because I could not find these, and then I finally did. So, and it's already, Valentine's Day is already over. So let's get into this. Click that like button, you guys, if you are excited to be doing these kits today. But anyway, it's going to be coming with stuffing, knitting needles, felt stickers, some spools of yarn, and a plastic needle, sewing needle. Alright. Did they change the age on this? I think this used to be like 6 or 8 or something. Anyway, instructional booklet, little pouch, yarn. I love it when it's in these bands. And then this one isn't. Okay, so that's that. Set these aside. Let's open up the pouch. We have our knitting needles, stuffing, sewing needle, felt stickers. Oh, that's a big one. Alright. So I'm going to put the stuffing back in here. I don't want it to get dirty. And then I'm going to put the felt stickers in there as well. Again, so that they don't get dirty. And then the plastic needle so it doesn't get lost. Okay. In this instructional booklet, there's a ton of text and illustrations to help you do this kit today. My video is going to be how I want to do it. You don't have to follow it my way. If it's a bit confusing, you could always refer to the booklet. In my channel, I cannot show specifics of the instructions due to copyright. So if you want to get this done, I do recommend that you go to their store to find these. And what I do on my channel is I'll teach you how to do new stitches at least 3 times step by step, and then thereafter I'll go my normal pace, which is probably a little fast, and then I will help you read through the instructions, and then of course we're going to assemble together. So if you need to speed up or slow down the video, go ahead and click on the gear button in the corner. There's playback options to go fast or slow. If you don't need to hear me talk, you could always lower the volume on your device and then click on the CC closed caption button. You will need a ruler, but luckily this instructional booklet does include a printed ruler on the side of their instructions, so you really don't need anything other than maybe scissors. Alright, so let's get into this. We're going to be making this Luv Gnome. I do like gnomes. Click that like button if you like gnomes yourself. But we're gonna do a total of 3 rectangles, and they're solid colors, so it won't be very complicated in terms of switching out colors. Now when they come in a band like this, there's 2 ends to the yarn, of course. This one can be found right away. It's the outside yarn. I like to find the inside yarn that's going to be in the inside of this spool here. Sometimes it shows up right away when you look in there. Sometimes it doesn't, but it's better to get the yarn from inside the spool because then it won't spin around when you are pulling on it. So if you can't find it, I'm just going to grab a random piece and I'm just going to pull it out. And then a chunk might come out like this, but that's fine because you could just put a paperweight on here, and when you continue to pull more, it's not going to spin around. If you pulled that other end, you would have to remove the band and it'll run everywhere. It gets pretty annoying. But anyway, okay, so let me just situate myself here, and then I'll show you how to cast on with a slip knot. First thing that we have to do is measure out the tail length. This tail length is going to be the amount of yarn that's going to be used to sew your pieces together. So off camera, I'm going to use this ruler and I'm going to measure out the tail. Alright, so I measured out my tail. This is the size that it needs to be at. Again, this is going to be used to sew your pieces together. We're going to put the tail down and away from you so that you don't accidentally use it. Do not use this to knit. You're going to run out of yarn fairly quickly. This yarn here belongs to the feeder. Belongs to the spool over here. This is called the feeder yarn. So what we're going to do is you're going to take your, we're going to cast on with a slip knot. So we're going to take your, there's a bunch of ways we can do it. Okay, well, let's just do it this way. Hold that spot very tightly, and then with your middle and ring, we're going to hold apart the other end. Then we're going to take two fingers here. We're going to lift up and turn down. We're going to take our middle and index and pull that feeder yarn through the loop, creating this huge knot. So now I'm going to make this knot smaller by pulling on this top yarn and pushing the knot towards the thumb. So do that now. You see I'm pulling on this top end and pushing the knot towards the thumb. This is going to minimize the amount of waste that you have with your yarn. Okay. Obviously you want to make it as close to that tail length as possible. Once you push it to where you cannot push it down any further, then take your tail and pull on it to make that knot just a little more snug. You don't have to pull on it too tightly. Hold onto the knot and then pull on the yarn small enough to where you can fit 2 knitting needles on there. And then slip your knitting needles in that loop. You can tighten it up or loosen it up as how you see fit. Alright, so now we have our knitting needles, our first stitch here, we have our tail down, our feeder yarn up. Okay, so now what we're going to do is cast on some stitches. This is for righty. So you'll want to get into your knit stitch. This project actually uses one kind of a stitch, really, the knit stitch. So to get into your knit stitch position, you want to cross your knitting needles. You want your right needle on the back and your left needle on top. And then we're always going to keep our feeder yarn towards the back, not the front, the back. Okay. So this is kind of, we're casting on stitches, but this is also the beginnings of doing a knit stitch. What we're going to do is take this feeder yarn and we're going to wrap it around the right needle. Meanwhile, you always want to maintain contact with your needles. If you look very closely, there's a little point where the 2 needles are touching. You never want to leave it open like this because you're going to end up losing stitches that way. Alright, so maintain contact always. So take your feeder yarn, we're going to wrap around our right needle from back to front, and then we're going to pull this down between our needles. You're going to feel or hear it snap. Okay, Then your yarn here is now in this little crevice that the 2 needles are making. What we're going to do now, I'm going to get some feeder yarn, wrap it around my finger. I just always like to have yarn ready to go. What we're going to do is slide our left needle down our right needle over the point and down its back, maintaining contact the whole entire time. This is going to force this needle here, the right needle, to push the feeder yarn through this loop. So I wish they had a different color needle, but I'm going to show you how to do this now. We're going to slide the left down the right. So do that over the point, okay, down its back, and as you see that right needle force the feeder yarn through this loop, it's creating a new stitch. Alright, so when we cast on though, we want to switch the stitches on the right needle over to the left needle. So you're going to take your left needle, put it through the loop, you're going to lift it off the right onto the left. So now we have 2 stitches here. Alright, let's do this again. Stick your hook into this new stitch now. We're going to get into knit stitch position, which is making an X. You want your right needle at the bottom, your left needle on top, feeder yarn in the back, always maintaining contact with your needles. Alright, now we're going to go wrap this feeder yarn around the right needle from back to front and down. You're going to feel or hear it snap. Okay, now it's inside this little crevice here. We're going to slide the left needle down the right needle over the point and down the back, and it's going to force this right needle to push the feeder yarn through this loop. So let's do that now. Slide down with the left needle over the point, down the back. It's forcing the feeder yarn through that loop, creating a new stitch. Then I'm going to just transfer this stitch over to the left by taking the left needle, going through that loop, and lifting it off the right needle. So now we have 3 stitches on here. Okay, so now we're going to do this one more time with you guys. Stick your needle into that new stitch there. We're going to push that through. Get into your knit stitch position, which is an X. Right needle on the bottom, left needle on top, feeder yarn in the back, always maintaining contact with your needle. We're going to wrap around the right needle from back to forward and down. You might hear or feel it snap. Okay, get it stuck in that crevice there. Alright, so we're going to slide the left needle down the right needle, down its back. It's going to force the feeder yarn through this loop here. Let's do that now. Okay, creating a new stitch. We're going to transfer over this stitch over to the left needle by taking the left needle through that new stitch and lifting it off the right needle. So now we have 4 stitches on here. Alright, so now that I did this 3 times, step by step, you can rewind this part as many times as you need until you're feeling comfortable to doing this on your own, but I'm going to go ahead and finish the remaining stitches required for this rectangle. Alright, so I'm just going to recount my stitches in the off camera. Alright, and it's so automatic that I did it and I wanted to explain it first. So when you are doing your stitches, right, and your hands manipulating the needle, it'll start to curl. So what you want to do to make sure that you don't accidentally increase your stitches, you want to make sure that this line here is straight. So I'll explain further about accidentally making an extra stitch when the first row is going to be pretty nice, but then thereafter it's going to get looser, which is normal, and there is a possibility you can increase in stitch. But what I'm talking about straight line is your projects should grow downward, so you want to make sure that line is in a straight row. So after each row you would just want to straighten out your project. Okay, so when you look on the underside, you see one consistent line here. If it's curling or rotating, that's not good, because you have to use the stitches, and I've done it before. You can accidentally like squish stitches together or miss them because you don't see or feel it happens. So anyway, just make sure that everything is nice and straight. I'm going to count my stitches, and then I'm going to come back in and show you what you have to do next. Alright, so now that we have our stitches completed, we're going to do the next row. And again, it's going to be a bunch of knit stitches. So it's the same operation really, with one different change. Rather than moving the stitch over to the left needle, we're going to leave it on the right needle. So for this particular project, the number of stitches that you have right now on your needle is going to be the same number of stitches that are going to end up on your... Alright, I said that wrong. The number of stitches that you have on your left needle is going to end up being the same number of stitches on your right. Okay, sorry, I'm naturally a left-handed person, and so I, sometimes don't think like a right-handed person. Okay, so let's do the first stitch. You're going to put your hook into this top stitch here. Right, you're going to get into your knit stitch position. Right needle on the bottom, left needle on top. Your feeder yarn in the back. We're going to wrap it around our right needle from back to forward and down. You might feel or hear it snap. We're going to main contact at all times. Right, it's going to get into that crevice. We're going to slide this left needle over the right, forcing that feeder yarn through this loop, creating a new stitch. So again, instead of transferring over this stitch to the left one, we're going to take that left stitch that we used and we're going to just gently flick that off the left needle like that. So again, like I said, the number that you started on this left needle is going to be the same number that you end up with on the right needle. So we have +1, -1. So let's do this again. Stick your hook into the next stitch here. We're going to go from back to forward and down. You're going to feel it, hear it snap. It's going to get stuck in that little crevice there. We're going to slide the left over the right, forcing that feeder yarn through the loop, and then we're going to gently remove this stitch off the needle. So now we have +2, -2. Right, one more time with you guys. Stick your needle into the next stitch here. Get into your knit stitch position. We're going to take the feeder yarn and we're going to go back to front and down. You're going to feel it, hear it snap. Get stuck in that crevice. We're going to slide the left needle down the right needle, forcing that feeder yarn through the loop, creating a new stitch. So we're going to lose this stitch off the left needle. So So now we have +3, -3. Alright, so now that I repeated this for you guys 3 times, step by step, I'm going to go ahead and finish the remaining stitches, and then I'm going to come back in and show you what you're going to do next. I think I just slipped a stitch off the needle. Yeah, so I'm gonna go back and pick that up. I felt it too. I was like, oh man. I think it's this one I dropped. Yeah. So be careful when removing stitches off your left needle. You don't want to accidentally lose another one. Alright, so once you've completed removing all the stitches off your left hook, off your left needle, they're now on your right needle. So what are you to do the next row? We basically just have to switch the needles around. So take your left needle, move it over to your right, and take your right needle and flip it over to your left, like that. And again, after each row, you want to make sure that you straighten this out. Now, I'm going to straighten this out and show you what it looks like when it's nice and straight and your project is growing downward versus if it's spiraling and how you can accidentally increase a stitch. So you see here, we have our stitches and it's all growing downward, okay? But let's say we didn't check it and we accidentally had it twisting upward. This one stitch here is now going to look like 2 stitches. You see that? And that's how you can tell. That's how you cannot tell that there's an extra stitch and you don't know about it. But if you look closely, it's spiraling up. So if you make sure that your project is always facing downward, you're going to feel some, it doesn't want to go down and straight. It means you're holding your feeder yarn up and back. You always want to hold your feeder yarn down and back. So that 2 stitches, like I said, from here went to 1 stitch here, and it can happen at every row. So that's what I used to do when I was learning. I didn't realize that I was creating an extra stitch on my own, and it ended up looking like a skirt more than a straight runner. Okay, so projects down this way, feeder yarns down and back. What we're gonna do is just continue the stitches like we just did. So what's gonna happen is I'm going to complete this rectangle. For each rectangle, there's a dimension in inches of how long it's supposed to be. Use your ruler to make sure it's that length. It does give you an approximate number of rows that you'll need, and sometimes that number is right, sometimes it's not right. But I would recommend going against the inches, preferably, so that way when we sew these pieces together, proportionally wise, it's all going to be the same as what's in the booklet. Alright, so I'm going to do the rest in silence, and then we'll come back and I'll show you how to cast off. Alright, so I finished the amount of rows to get to the length that the rectangle needs to be. So now let's learn how to cast off. So to cast off, you always have to have 2 knit stitches on your right needle. So let's knit 2 stitches. Alright, then we're going to do some leapfrog action. You're going to pick up this bottom stitch here, and we're going to leapfrog it over the next one, which is right here. So leapfrog it. We're going to hold on to this stitch so that we don't lose it, but we're going to remove this stitch here off the needle on the right, and then off the needle on the left. So we leapfrog that stitch all the way over and off the needles. So let's knit another stitch, because you always have to have at least 2 knit stitches on the right side. So we're going to pick up this bottom stitch now, and we're going to leapfrog it over the next, hold back that stitch. We're going to lift this needle off the right needle and then off the left needle. So we have 1 stitch left on there. Let's do 1 more knit stitch. So you have 2 stitches on here. We're going to leapfrog this bottom stitch over the next, hold down that stitch, remove this one off the right needle and off the left needle. So I'm just going to complete doing this. I showed you how to do this at least 3 times, step by step. You can replay this part of the video as many times as you need until you're comfortable doing this on your own. Alright. Now that we have 1 stitch left on the right needle, what do we do? Alright, I'm going to show you. So we're going to cut about 1 inch or so off of the feeder yarn. Then we're going to yarn over the right needle, and then we're going to leapfrog this stitch over the yarn over and off the needle, the right needle, and then off the left needle. I want to pull the right needle all the way out and tighten up this loop here. So we finished our first rectangle. Alright, so we have 2 rectangles left to go, and they're each going to get easier because they're not as big as this one. So I'm going to do those off camera. We're just using the blue. If you'd like, you can rewind this video to the beginning where I show you how to cast on with the slip knot and all that jazz. But when we come back, I'm gonna now show you guys how to sew all these pieces together. Alright, so I have my rectangles done here. I'm going to take my pouch and remove the contents of the pouch, especially the sewing needle. And then the stuffing I'm going to leave in there. Okay, so we're going to sew this together. We have our base that we are going to sew on to our little ring here. We want to put the not so pretty side on the outside because we're going to be flipping this inside out. So choose the side that looks the best and face that on the inside, and I'm going to sew this ring together here. Right, once you've sewn the side down, we're going to then sew this together. I want to see if this, okay, I usually use this cylinder to just keep the shape, and it fits just inside this square, so I'm going to use that to sew on. So if you don't have it, just try your best to go around in a circle. Okay, once you've gotten to the other side, I'm just going to use these excess pieces to tie and secure the tail together. I'm feeling like putting 3. Usually I just put 2, but sometimes I feel like you need more. Alright. So now we're probably going to turn this inside out. So let's go ahead and do that. If you want this to be more stable, you can cut a piece of cardboard and place it down in here. But now we're going to sew the pink together. And for this one, it says it doesn't really do the inside out thing. I don't know why you can't just sew this all inside out, because now you're gonna have the outside facing in, and it's just easier to clean up the side stitch when you do this inside out. I mean, I guess you can do that now and then flip it inside out, but it's not enough to do that. But anyway, so I'm going to sew these sides together. Okay, and since this is going to be the right side out, you want to make sure that your stitches are nice and that we're going to tuck in any of these excess pieces on the inside. Okay, once you've gotten all the way to the other side, we're going to then sew this bottom to this rim here. So I don't know if this is the same size. This one's bigger. Oh, why do they do it that way? Anyway, I'm going to just try to sew this all the way around. Okay, so once I'm all the way around, let's see, I'm going to go in and out of this side here because I want to trail this all the way up to the other end. Okay, so from here, let's put in our stuffing. Alright, so now we're going to create a garter stitch, which is basically going in and out of the edge here. Okay, and then once you're all the way back around, you want to make sure when you're pulling that you're not pulling this part. So pinch it and then pull on this so that the top edge only starts to go in. Okay. And then it says to tie it securely. I also find that if we can go in here and just sew together the ring, because it's not going to be as closed as you think. You can pull and pull and pull and it's not going to do that. But what you can do is make sure it's secure by sewing the edges. I'm just doing a little crisscross here. Alright, then I'm just going to find a spot to tie my knot. Okay, then I'm going to go in one end and randomly out the other end. Okay, cut this flush to the surface, and then when you squish this up and shape it how you want to shape it, it'll disappear from there. So okay, so now the last thing to do is to stick on all the stickers. Alright, let's see. So we're not going to use this side because this is the stitch side. So let's turn this over. We're going to use this side, and I'm going to be using this here. Start with the biggest piece that is more of a background piece. Okay, so stick that right under the brim of the hat, and you're going to want to press this down to make sure that every bit of the sticky surface is sticking to the surface of your gnome. So just hold it down there for a few seconds. You can take a sewing needle and some thread and sew around the edges to secure the gnome's face. Okay. And now, let's see, I'm going to place the cheeks, the rosy cheeks on here. Okay. And then we have some feet. Now it's a little egg-like looking, so you want to place them in a way that looks like a foot. So I want the more, the less pointy edge to be at the bottom. And you can maybe have it tilt out a little bit. Again, hold this down a few seconds to make sure that the stick is on every bit of surface it can possibly land on. Let's do the other foot. Okay, this one too. Place it in such a way that it looks like a foot naturally resting. And hold this down for a few seconds. Right, so there's that. Then you have your felt stickers with the hearts. We're just going to randomly place them on the hat. Let's have one in the middle. Last one. All right. So comment below, let me know what you think. Click that like button if you like my gnome, or if you are on your way to complete your gnome. This is what it's supposed to look like. Not so bad. But yes, again, I'm going to be trying to drop the 4 Valentine's Day Valentine's Day kits that I have. If there are any other Valentine's Day kits that you may have that you wanted to see, you can always send me a clear image via email. My info is in the description box as well as on my channel. And I can help you out with that. Otherwise, I will be moving on with all my other kits. And then, of course, if you've seen my 5 Below haul, I've got a ton more other regular kits that I gotta get to. And then we have Easter. So, I don't know if they're coming out with any St. Patrick Day ones, but I can expect it. So, we're gonna be fairly busy again. At any rate, thank you so much, you guys, for watching. This is Isms by Josie. Please share, like, and subscribe for future videos. And I'll see you again next time. Thanks. Bye.